joining me on a bank holiday.
That's okay.
So welcome everyone to TLDCast. We're here today with Jo Cook, who I'm sure everyone on here knows, but just in case you don't, she has joined us on a bank holiday. What bank holiday is this?
So this is what's called a May bank holiday. So we have lots of bank holidays in the UK. We have Mondays, gives us long weekends. It's a long-standing tradition, and it's also a tradition for the weather to be terrible in the UK. And it's a bit cloudy and horrible, but it hasn't stopped me and Jane getting in the garden. We've got in the garden, so we're okay.
That was my weekend plan, and then it just stormed the whole time here in DC. Well, in the vein of learning from each other, I think we can learn about May bank holidays and maybe take on that tradition.
Good
That's really
idea.
nice. So hello everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining. This is the second time I'm doing this, so now I'm an expert. We're going to talk to Jo about the process of creating and executing an idea, any sort of performance support, any sort of idea like that. And what we're working on today is her virtual classroom webinar series. So if you want to talk just super high level about the program that you're doing, we'll dig into all of the details, but just very high level. What are we talking about today?
So CPD, continuous professional development, is all about people being able to, as you say, iterate and be able to pick up their skills and develop them as they go along. We know that a training course is just part of the solution. It gets the ball rolling, it gets people enthused in those basic skills. And my area, as most of you will know, is webinars and virtual classrooms. So it's how do I help people once they've been on a course, or maybe they can't afford a course, how do they have that little bit that they need all the time to keep going and get better and better and better? And that's where we came up with the CPD series.
Very cool. So you talked about this a little bit, but what was the performance issue that you were looking at? What did you look out into the world and say, I can fix this?
Well, there's lots of those things. I don't have time and energy for all of them, unfortunately. So I think the big thing is we knew with our courses, whether it was just like a 2-session course or a 5-session course, we knew that we were helping people go from kind of 0 to hero or from not very good to great. But then after that, people are kind of left in a wide open world of not quite knowing where to go next, and they've done all those basic steps, they're doing really great, but then how do you get even better? How do you get that polish? How do you get that detail? And I had lots of people saying to me, Jo, how did you do it? And it's like, well, I got on and did it, is the basic thing, is I was just doing it all the time. But I was learning from other people. I was working on different projects. I was working for different companies, and not everybody has those opportunities. So we wanted a place where people could come and get those opportunities, maybe to develop that network of people around them, which not many people do have in virtual classrooms and webinars. It's a little bit of a niche. And also to be able to have the opportunity to develop those skills further. That performance gap was, how do I go from I'm not mega scared of the technology to how do I do whiteboards really, really well? What fun, funky, creative things can I do? And that was the gap that I was noticing.
And have you noticed in the in doing this that part of the fear is that it keeps changing? Like every time you go into WebEx, not every time, but if you do this a couple of times a year, there's a new feature and there's a new whiteboard. Everything works slightly differently. So kind of coming to terms with the fact that you're not going to be an expert forever, has that, do you think, influenced the need for this type of community iterative building that we do here at TLDC and then you're doing in yours?
Absolutely, because on the TLDC Slack group, there's a whole channel there just for help. And that's kind of, I've got something similar in my community, which is like a discussion area just to say, nah, I've got this problem, how do I fix it? And actually I've got a free version of the community as well, so anybody can sign up to that anytime. And what that allows people to do is go, this has changed, that technology is upgraded, my whiteboard doesn't work anymore, this is upgraded, how does it help me to do this better? Can you give me some ideas? And that's what that's all about.
Yeah. And even today I was running a little late because for some reason Crowdcast was not working in Google. So I opened up Firefox, which I haven't opened in like a year. And I keep getting this, this is critically out of date. But if I updated it, I'm sure something will change and I might break whatever precarious system I have going now. So even if WebEx isn't doing anything, Google is going to add a security issue. And, your company is going to move to Zoom, and then you have to figure out how to do the same things on Zoom or go to meeting. So you mentioned that you had done some research when you started planning this out. So what types of things did you do to kind of make sure that you're filling the gap that actually exists, figuring out what that is?
Well, that's really interesting. So there are two parts to this. One is we did some surveys, and I've done some LinkedIn articles on this. If you go and find me on LinkedIn, some articles that I published, and we had something like 57 responses, which if you're in sort of really into your research, your sample population, you probably want 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, but it was all to do with the size of what's relevant and in context. And so 57 for us, I thought was actually a reasonably good number. I was surprised that anybody was going to fill in the survey. So I was happy with that. So that gave us some really good indications. And as I say, I've written on some of that, and you can go and find that on LinkedIn. Also, we did some speaking to people. So we just went and asked, kind of like an appreciative inquiry, if you like, just went and asked them and said, this is our idea. What do you think? What do you like? What do you not like? A lot of this was around the price point as well. That was probably one of the biggest things, is how much are we going to charge for this? We have no idea if it should be £10 a month or £1,000 a month. So it's a monthly subscription model. So we didn't have much of a clue about that, other than costing out what we thought was going to be our time. But even within that, you've got your lowest point and what you think is the highest point, and somewhere in the middle you hope people are going to pay. The other bit of research I did, well, I suppose wasn't research, was we went to a marketing company who work within L&D in the UK, and we're saying, well, this is our idea, this is what we want to do, we've done this research, we've done this, what should we do next? Because I do know how important business plans are, and research is, and qualitative as well as quantitative research. And what they really did was give me the confidence to say, you know what, Jo, you've been doing this like 4 years. This is what your whole company does. You're well connected in L&D. You've got a really good broad understanding. I've worked for lots of different companies designing and delivering this kind of training. And I think this across all of those. And this is a gap in the market and nobody else is doing it. And Jo, just trust yourself. So I kind of went, okay, let's do it. And the other thing I need to say at this point as well, most of you know that Michael works with me. He's my business operations manager and my brother. And this was partly his idea as well. When we very first started working together 2 years ago, he bought this concept with him, and we turned it into what is now our CPD series with the community element and so on. And in terms of the work we'll get to later, especially the business side, the payments and stuff like that, Michael has done the most huge amount of work, and this would never ever have launched without both of us working on our skills. So he's not here today. He's actually having his day off in the UK, but I just want to say a huge shout out to him as well, and I'm sure we'll dig into some of those different areas.
Yeah, I saw the little note at the bottom that says, if you think you should have a membership, contact Michael. And as the person who's done that part, my heart broke for Michael just a little bit, because I know that
I am, so it's less about him.
But yes, everyone, a moment of silence for the technical side. It's one of the things I like most about this is hearing someone like you say, I just needed the confidence to do this idea that I know was a good idea. Because I think all of us feel like that all the time. And that's, it always helps to hear someone who you really respect say the same thing that the back of your head is saying too. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. So then after you did all of that, you did a pilot, you did some tests. So how did those go?
So Michael and I came up with the concept of what we wanted to do, which included, part of that was the research of things like how long should it be. We were thinking 90 minutes, and the research was just like, well, actually some people want 30 minutes, some people want more, some people want 2 sessions a month, some people want 1, all sorts of stuff. And at the end of the day, at some point you just need to make a decision and run with it. So we did take in mind what people had said in their research, and we kind of had a middle ground. So some highlights of that were a 90-minute webinar every month, completely live online. We wanted to make sure we did a topic each month. We wanted it to be super involved, engaging, interactive, all the things that we teach, to practice what we preach, basically. We wanted it to be hands-on, where people could come and, try out the controls and practice and exercise and get feedback. We also wanted there to be loads of resources, exclusive resources for people that they can't get elsewhere. We give away loads of stuff. We've got a podcast, we've got a blog, we've got the forum, all sorts of different things. But we wanted some stuff that was specifically for our members only. So templates, guides, those kind of things. The other thing that we wanted to do was have video debriefs, and somebody commented the other day, I didn't have time to watch the whole session, but I did have time to watch your 25-minute debrief, and that's just another way to access that. Within that, also, obviously, we've got the community membership where people can go and discuss and ask questions. And then within the 90 minutes, we've got the session design itself and the structure within that. So we piloted that, and we had absolutely amazing feedback. 100% of people, which was 16 or 18, said that they'd recommend it. About 90% of what we did was really, really positive. There were a few comments on either things that I did in my delivery or in our design, or the way that we did the pilot, which we had constructive criticism for, some of which we expected. And I can talk more about some of those things, including our what's it called, handbook, which didn't go down very well, understandably so. Other parts are about the structure that we had within the design of the learning of the session and how that's changed over the sessions as well.
So that's interesting that Hamrick's book didn't go over well. Though, kind of taking a step back, one of the big decisions is, what kind of format does this need to be? Does it need to be live? And the subject matter, I think for you, probably takes out a little bit of that tough decision making. But what did you guys think about? What use cases were you thinking about when you designed it? Was it, what the people would be doing, whether they'd want to do it at work or after work, those kinds of things? And how did you make the decisions about what the format would look like?
Lots and lots of discussion between me and Michael. Lots of, we never argue, which is really nice. We sometimes have some frustrated conversations. Quite a lot of conversations where he said, no, that's what I said originally, and you said not to, and now you've come back to that idea. It's like, well, we're very similar, Michael. It was obviously a good idea, and that's why I've had it now. But also, you're absolutely right. It's about being really super clear about your target audience and about what their needs are. So what we absolutely knew we were working with were teams of people, or the majority of our focus was teams of people developing their webinar and virtual classroom skills. That will obviously include individuals, self-employed, small companies, but we knew from our sales of our courses it had to include the larger companies with 4, 8, 10, or, we've worked with teams of 50 people. So it depends on kind of those sizes. And therefore it was during the day, during their working day, because this should be part of their development for what they're doing. And even just things like, what time of day are we going to run our session? And when you were putting in time zones, it just gets so complicated. And you've probably all had these experiences in various different ways, even if it's just for meetings. And we knew we were going to let down at least one major time zone in the world. And it was just like, which one? And in the end, we opted for 2 p.m. UK time, which goes through to, I think, 11 a.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. Eastern. Something like that. And it goes to, I think in Australia and New Zealand, that's like midnight, 1 a.m. So it's like, but even within that, there's a plan of like, okay, well, when we get to the point of enough, demand, whether that's demand that exceeds what we think is going to be valuable in a webinar. So let's say we have more than 100 people that want to join at a time. I think there's a point at which we might want to split that, and then you can have an earlier time zone and a later time zone. Or if a client comes along and says, actually, we've got 20 people in another time zone, and those subscriptions would financially make it more worthwhile to repeat that. So it's a learning point, but also it's a business point, and that's something that Michael is so good at, is he always brings that business point in, whereas I'm always for the learning point. But there's a point at which they overlap, and that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. And then when you're working with live groups like that, how do you balance the individuals who all have different end goals, and then the teams that are really more working together for one? They know what the meetings look like, they know how they're going to use this, they're all working together on that. Do you do small groups within the class? Do you break them out? Do you try to split up teams? How do you?
No. So it's a really, really good question. And I think if this was a training course per se of 2, 5, 10 sessions, whatever it is, I think that would be something that would be really, really relevant. What we offer every month is a webinar, and that's really specifically different from offering a training course. So at the moment, we don't do that. We might be splitting people up in groups when we cover breakout rooms for that very reason. But what we've done instead is we've structured it into 3 rough kind of parts of the session. So we have the spotlight part of the session where we introduce the topic, we get everybody's thoughts about it, we reference maybe some research, maybe some good practice, something like that. Then we go into a very practical element, and this is where usually we've designed an activity for then people to go and deliver back, so you can get very hands-on, and we discuss that and get the feedback. And then in the third part, it's about making it right for you and making it work for you. So we try and have a big-ish closing activity or discussion that says, right, well, we've learned about it, we've practiced it, and now how actually are you going to do it in your organization? So actually, whether you are one person on your own in a small company working with very small clients, or whether you're part of a team of 50 people, you're still going to have a specific thing that you do for your region, your team, your topic area. And you might have some of your team with you, you might not on the live session. And so therefore it's about making it right for you. So that's how I tackle that one rather than having the groups differently.
That makes sense. So you're asking them to form that understanding themselves rather than leading them through it. Yeah.
I think I give them the opportunity to explore that. And also by saying, this is what's right for me in my situation, and this is what's right for you in your situation, hopefully what we're doing is going, never thought about it that way. I'm going to take that idea, either take it, or I'm going to take it and tweak it and apply it to me. So that's what I think adult learning is about, and respecting the adult learner too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a good point. So you have the webinar, you have the discussion group. And is that kind of like what we at TLDC would be familiar with?
Yeah, I can show you actually if you want me to share my screen.
Oh, that would be great.
And I see that Luis has asked a question, and I will answer that one in just a moment. So let me show you. Here we go. So this is the webpage about the CPD series. That's not what I was aiming to show you. This is my free community. So the pink one is the completely free, off you go and have a look at it community. But this one here is the CPD community. It's members only. So you can't get in here unless you're a member at the moment. I think there's a couple of people here who are. And this is just on a platform called Ning. It's not the best platform in the world, but it's pretty good. And we wanted it to do several really specific things, including having a lockdown area. And we also had a certain budget to fit. So this is why we opted for this. So we've got various areas, including, like you say, the discussion area. So this is where people can go and share things. So Chris in the UK, you've had her on TLDC before. She went and shared a document, which was absolutely lovely, of 100 different ways to go and learn. Bethany previously Taylor, now Patterson, that you guys all know. She's asked a question on here as well. What are people's favourite activities to go and have a look at? So we've got loads of ways that people can actually ask those questions and get involved. Also, what we have are the resources. So this is specifically where we go and share something. We split it down by sessions. If you only want to see stuff from session 2, you can go and see a video debrief that we did, and this is where we chat through different things. It's just me and Mike chatting and having a bit of a laugh along the way, which we always like to do. And also we've got various different resources in here. So all of the topics that we take in the session, I then go and write basically an article or a blog about it, and there's various resources people can go and access as well, and various other things as well. We've got some videos that people can go and have a look at, and Jane, who's here today, has been absolutely amazing by really helping me with my Camtasia use and giving me little tips, and she's always sending me an email going, did you know about this, and here's this. So really recommend Jane for supporting and helping on that. So hopefully that answers your questions about that, and I can always tell you guys a little bit more if you want me to, but that gives you a bit of an overview about the behind the scenes, the members only part.
That's really great. I completely forgot about Ning. We used it 10 or so years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, somewhere that I worked. It was for a totally different purpose, but that's really interesting. So part of setting that up was that were you thinking about demonstrating ways in which people can extend their own virtual training into everyday use?
What do you mean by that?
So were you kind of, in setting that up, were you intentionally thinking of ways that people could then use the techniques that you're using in that community to extend their own training?
Yeah, I hope so. And whilst it's not the main part of the design, it's an underlying theme in everything we do, is wanting to really model good practice and good behaviour. So we'd like to use, modern learning pedagogies, modern technology where it's appropriate, and just give people an idea of this is a way that you can go and do it. And it could work for you, or you might just need to tweak it. Maybe Ning isn't the way to do it, but maybe the things that I've done in Ning, you go, that's kind of cool. We'll try that in our Slack group or in our Yammer group or whatever it might be.
That's really interesting. I like that. I like how much you were able to model the right stuff because you're using the same techniques as the people you're teaching. That's always kind of a nice one-to-one. Yeah, it's easy. It's easier to model virtual classroom training by providing really good virtual classroom experience.
Yeah.
So as an example, what was your topic last month?
Oh, you're asking me things that I've got to go and look up now. So we've done, it's like once you've done it, it goes out of your head. March was starting out right with your attendees. We thought that was a really great one to start our first members only. And last month was different group sessions and, group sizes and session timings. So whether you should do 30 minutes with 100 people, or should you do 2 hours with 10 people, or any which way in between.
Okay. And then what are you doing this month if people want to join?
We're doing technology. So it's all about getting over that barrier of technology. And we thought they were 3 really good topics to start with right at the beginning, because people kind of go, well, how do I do it well? How long should the session be? How many people should be there? And the technology, they're kind of the main things that people have as hurdles. And going back to Luis's question about the audience and about the backgrounds, they are quite varied. So we've got some people who literally are self-employed and thinking about maybe doing some kind of very low-key, low-level webinars in their company. We've got other people. One of our clients is a big government contract and, a big government department here in the UK. And actually, they've got 50 members of their staff that are joining us on the CPD series, and they work globally and have their very specific needs versus maybe one person I can think of who lives not far from me, not sure about going online, and is doing this to develop their skills to look out for their business, and kind of everything else in between.
Does the composition of the audience look like what you expected when you started when you came up with the idea?
Yeah, I think so. Partly because we knew we had some of those contracts in place already, and we'd said to them, when we launched this, you're getting it. So partly there was that, I'll be honest. Also, we've targeted those teams. We knew a subdivision of that was going to be individuals or small companies, because partly what we wanted to be able to offer people is a way to develop their skills and learn things who couldn't afford a course. So our courses are not cheap. I'm going to be really honest about it. We're at the tailored end of really quality delivery. And quite frankly, you don't get that on an off-the-shelf budget. We're not super duper expensive, I don't think. Certainly our sales don't say that, but we do know that you're buying what you get, which is really tailored and good quality. But not everyone can afford that. And especially when we've been working with smaller teams, smaller companies, and the charity sector, quite frankly, were too expensive for some of them. But I still wanted to help them. They still needed the help. They still deserved the help. And this was a way to make it much more affordable, because this is, if you go and look on the website now, it's £500 for the year. So I don't know what that is in dollars, $770 maybe off the top of my head. Don't quote me. But as that works out at less than £30 per hour of live stuff that you get, let alone the community and the resources. So we wanted to make it really affordable for people in case they couldn't afford to go on any course, not just ours, but any course they might not be able to afford, but still really wanted those skills. So we knew we were going to get that part of the market, as well as the teams that needed the help and support as well.
That's it. And then did you know going in that teams would maybe, I used to run webinars where we sold it by site. So if you want to shove 100 people in that room, then be our guest. Or did you expect that going in, or is it the community kind of needs an individualized pricing and individualized login?
So it is for individuals, and we do know we've got some people who have joined where it's one person from the team has joined, paid the subscription, and they're going to disseminate the information internally. And that's absolutely fine, because that's how we do things in life and in corporate learning especially. Not everybody can do everything. So you need somebody maybe to be the specialist who then supports the rest of the team in all sorts of different things. In other things, it's the whole team that has joined or is part of the community, because they're all doing that. It is for individuals. We always say all of our training it should be one person at one computer with one login. Because then if we're doing a live session where, like you guys are here right now, if you want to ask a question, you can go and type that in the ask a question area. And we know that's from Bob or whoever it might be. If we ask you, click the green check mark, we know it's Bob who's clicked the green check mark, and Bob hasn't had to look around the room and gone, is there a consensus from everyone and what if there isn't? And likewise, in the community, we wanted Bob to be able to be the person to ask a question or make a comment. That's not to say they won't have their own discussions. That's really important to do that internally, but it is kind of an individual approach in that way.
Well, and I hope we as a group are never selling things, expecting people to never teach anyone what they've learned.
Absolutely. That's the whole point. I mean, we give out loads of free stuff. The whole point is go share, go do it. And I really love that people will speak to me or message me and say, I've been listening to your podcast and I've learned X, Y, and Z. It's like, wow, we just see numbers of people listening to our podcast. We don't necessarily always hear the stories of what they enjoyed or what they didn't enjoy, maybe, and what they learned and what they applied or what they disagreed with until they come and tell us. So that's really awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And for everyone in here, always share that. I feel like I tell the Good Practice podcast constantly what I liked about the episodes, because there's always something that I listen to it in the car. I have to talk about this, but it's that's good feedback to have.
Yeah, because otherwise you're throwing stuff out there without knowing what works. And there's only so much of that you can do before you start questioning it. I was at an event end of last year, and I was in the ladies washing my hands, and somebody came up to me and went, "Oh, you're Lightbulb Joe. I love what you're doing on Twitter. Please just continue." And there was a bit of me that went, "Well, what? I need specifics. I know, is it that I share stuff? Is it my stuff? Is it my comments? Is it my..." But you know, it wasn't that kind of conversation. I just went, "Thank you so much." I thought, well, that's kind of cool. So I'm just going to carry on. It's given me confidence to do that.
Oh, I love that. ATD's here soon, so I'm excited to just go there and tell everyone how much I like them.
Absolutely. And I think we should tell each other more, because I don't think, I mean, this is getting off track a little bit, but I don't think people always know what they're doing is noticed or appreciated or understood. And also, maybe it's a British thing rather than an American thing, you know, the whole stiff British upper lip thing. And Americans generally, is a stereotype, so much better at giving praise and telling people what you've done really well. And I think we need to do that a little bit more, so that everybody understands that and has confidence from it too. But as I say, slightly off topic, I think.
Well, specific praise is good, but you can take that woman's comment and just be like, everything you've ever done on Twitter, everything you're doing, perfect.
Yeah, I'm going to take that with me today. Thank you, Kristen.
Okay, so I want to encourage everyone to keep asking. Oh, Louise, you're ahead of me. So I want to move into the more after action stuff in a minute. But Louise first wanted to know what you've learned about the concept of continuous learning that has surprised you.
Good question, Louise. That is making me think. I think one of the things, and this is kind of a community point of view, I don't know if it's a business point of view as well as learning, is I'm at the point of learning, I think, or the surprise has been that the community part of it has not been quite as vocal as I thought it might have been. I know that communities take a while to build. I know they take a while for people to get used to it, get in the habit. We're also on a, we're on a website platform that's not part of your workflow. We haven't got an app, we're not on Slack where you might be already and just change workplaces. So we know that there are some barriers there. I think I'd hoped there would be a little bit more conversation with regards, here's the resource about topic X, and people to go, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, and have a discussion. So whether that is just, it needs more time, or one of the things that I'm wondering that I need to ask people about and do some research on this is, are we giving people too much? Is it overwhelming to have the amount of resources that we're giving to people? And whilst we've got things broken down with regards sessions and topics and levels of, are you a beginner, intermediate, advanced, so that in theory people can just go, I'm new here, I just want to click on beginner, or I only want the stuff relating to the last session. I don't know whether we're writing things that are too long or there's too many of them, and that's why people aren't involved as much as we thought they were going to be. So when they are involved, it's amazing. So it could just be time, it could be too much, it could be I'm panicking over nothing, and then that's the surprise, is panic over nothing.
Do you find that there's a difference in levels of engagement between individuals who are, working on their own and people who are members of a team?
I think the short answer is yes. The thing that springs to mind initially, if we're talking about in the virtual sessions, in the webinars every month, then I think there's a lot of where people are in teams, they talk to each other. So, hey, Bob, welcome to the session. Oh, Alice, it's you. Hey, great you're here. And Bob, we could try this on our course, and so on. So I think there's some of that. Whereas the individuals don't have that, other than maybe with me and Michael, who they know, they don't have that in the same way. But hopefully what starts coming out of it is that people start talking amongst themselves. So Jane, who's been on our sessions, knows Gail, who comes on our sessions. They're both fabulous independent businesswomen and amazing people in their own right, but they know each other. So then that becomes their team. So you could look at it that way.
Yeah, I was actually expecting the opposite of the people who are working on their own, kind of those remote workers who are just starved for conversation, go in and are making all the forum posts and saying, look at this thing I found. Whereas the people who are in teams can just email someone and say, who has the same kind of job, and say, look
ask
what
me
I
that
found.
question again in 6 months and we'll see if the answer is exactly what you predict or not.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too, because that is sometimes I see that with TLDC, the people who are working individually, who are consultants, are pretty reliable attendees.
Yeah.
And
Jane makes a great point about, from a community or a forum point of view, that she likes the email notifications because that reminds her to go in and look at something, which is really important. So then this comes down to the quality of your platform. And I've noticed on some things on Ning, there's a follow this item button you can click for when you get the notifications. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I haven't quite worked out, is that a barrier or not? We've just started this Friday, actually. We just started a new thing where to do exactly what Jane has said is we've emailed people from within the community going, this is what's happened on the community this week. You've got this video, go and comment. There's this question, go and share your ideas. So hopefully that will kind of do that. And it comes down to running a community. So we've got the live monthly webinars and the community part and the business part, I guess almost 3 different kind of core areas.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Luis mentioned that he's interested in how we're filtering or being critical of our continuous learning paths. And that's having that online forum is really helpful when you have a specific need. But you think of those kinds of things when you have that specific need. And then you have to wait, if it's on an online platform, if there aren't any email notifications going out every single time anything's posted, you're waiting until someone else has a specific need. So they go to the forum and then they see, hopefully they can answer. If not, it's just another very specific need being posted.
Exactly. So and it's that balance. And one of the things we've done is the debrief videos to try and have that middle ground of, well, here's a resource for you, as well as a debrief, and bring in extra detail and bring in somebody else who's a different speaker, and to give, as Luis says, that quality over quantity. And I'm just at this point now, is it's like, are we giving what we think is quality? And is it too much quantity? Do we need to reduce the quantity and up the quality? Does that mean less posts does it mean shorter posts? Does it mean longer posts? So would people prefer, one really long in-depth post, which we do. We do a post after each session, and that's reasonably long, 500-600 words, maybe a bit more. Or would people prefer lots of the little tiny things with the resources? And at the moment, we don't quite have the data and the research to make those decisions, but they're the questions that I'm looking at.
That's interesting. And that, I think, is almost a problem specific to you, because you are a very prolific writer. I'm always amazed at how
I've been told that a few times.
Maybe a blog post a month I could manage to eke out, but oh my goodness. And I can only write really on
12. It's just blah, 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 blah. It's just normal. So
I'm glad that other people have said that. Because as you were saying, I was like, I've never heard anyone else. I write so much. I write so much amazing content. I just don't know the best way to give it to people. But that's a good problem to have for you and us.
Yeah. And it's, as you say, it's a good problem, but it's still a problem. Is it too much? It wouldn't be the first time I've been told you are too much, Joe. But you don't want to overwhelm people. The whole point is to give them a resource and to help people. And if they're just getting this fire hose of stuff, we get back to that kind of filter problem. So as I say, I don't know the answers yet. It could be that I'm thinking too much into it, and it's absolutely fine. It could be that I need the data and to speak to people for the qualitative stuff and put the two together and go, okay, let's ease back on this or change up on that. But it's a process of discovery, and that's what makes each month that we do, just some of it's just that subtle tweak and go, let's try that this month and see what happens.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of whether if I'm expected to do all of those things, if there's a lot available to me, and there's even, I feel like I'm expected, there's some sort of implicit expectation that I'm going to review all of those, then that puts me in a panic. So if it's not very clear that if you are doing this, this one's relevant to you. If not, don't worry. Like it's there if you need it. You don't have to read it before our next webinar.
Yeah.
And having that differentiation helps to take that overload away. It's like what Louise was saying. We talk internally at my company a lot about potentially coming up with like we would like a Slack bot that every time you schedule a meeting with these people for an hour, it just tells you how much that meeting costs in time, in billable time. Just so you know, and you can say, does this need to be an hour-long meeting? And that you also have to think of with professional development, because it costs the time of the professional development plus the actual cost of the professional development. So putting those time limits on and say, here's how much is available, but we actually expect people to get through this much smaller amount is good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is something that Michael has done so well for the whole of Lightbulb Moment, not just the CPD series, and really helped me refine my thinking. I thought I was good at this anyway, and he's really helped me to focus this even more. Is he looks at things. He used to work in an accountancy firm. He was the business manager, their office manager. And so literally any half hour, any time block that you weren't doing your accountancy work, you had to kind of really justify why you weren't working for the company. And if you, God forbid, you wanted a day off to go for a conference, that was a major deal. And so he's really helped me look at this in our 90-minute webinar we run every month, just going, why ask that question? What's that point? From a business point of view, in that 90 minutes, what value has someone got from that? What can they take away? And what can they actually go and do? And as I say, I thought I was good at that, but he's just really honed my thinking around it. And there's also the amount of times we've gone on other people's webinars, courses, and a lot of these maybe are free ones for their marketing or trying to get you to sign up. We get the deal. But also, you can be there 15 minutes in, kind of, still haven't covered anything yet. They're still yapping on about something. And the amount of times we've been on something for an hour and we've got 10 minutes worth of quality from it. And we didn't want to do that for this. We wanted out of 90 minutes to have 90 minutes worth of quality, 80 minutes worth of quality. So it's really interesting for me to have that focus from him, but also for him to broaden and develop his focus from a learning point of view. So if I make this simplified and more black and white than it is, he will quite often say to me, what's the business kind of rationale for doing this? What are they getting out of it? Let's just do this. Whereas I'll come at from the point of view of going, well, we really need to discuss this and have the learning experience. And quite often, even in a live session, he'll be private messaging me going, it's not working, move on, let's do another question. No. And then every now and then he's right. But usually he kind of goes, actually, that worked really well in the end. It's like, I know, I'm a learning designer. I've been doing this for 25 years, 20 years. I was like, I know how to do some of this stuff. Sometimes you're right, but sometimes, people need the room and the space to have the experience.
Yeah, that's a good, that happens a lot when you're doing like design sprints and things like that. You do something that's, you walk around outside and what you're doing is getting a new perspective, but internally you're like, why am I walking outside? I have things to do. Very busy woman. Okay, so if you look at your first session, even the pilot, when you're still tweaking, what's the biggest couple of things that worked really well that you expected to work or that you were surprised about?
Okay. I think there's kind of three things springing to mind. One is the overall format and structure we were really happy with. We were happy with the 3 parts of kind of spotlight, practical and making it work for you. Within that, we had a few things. We have some knowledge drops, we call them. And that's an interesting thing that changed quite a lot. So maybe I'll come back to that in a moment, but it's a few minutes of digging into a topic and exploring that. Some other things that worked really well were the hands-on practical elements, although in the pilot, one bit was quite confusing. We got quite a lot of constructive feedback about that, which was like, yeah, we kind of knew that. So that was really positive, but the other part of it worked really, really well. What was my third thing? I've forgotten now. So there you are. There's your two things.
Okay. And then this will bring us back to the handbook and the knowledge drops, but what did not work the way that you expected?
So one was the handbook or the guide. And it was really interesting because all the way back to the very first discussion, Michael had been like, right, we've got to have a handbook. We've got to have a workbook, for people to make notes in. And I was like, no, because like they're adult learners, they can make their own notes. They'll do whatever they want. But then I kind of almost second guessed myself. And I thought, well, maybe I'm being lazy and we should make a workbook. We did so the research that we did, I had a survey and it was just like, we're thinking of doing this. What do you want? And we gave them a whole load of options. And one of which was a workbook. And it came out not top or anything, but most people had kind of gone, yeah, that's kind of cool. We like that idea. There was a number of things that came together, one of which was we left it a bit late to work on and make it really, really good to our standard. We did get to a point with the pilot where it's like, we've got one. We know we're not really happy with it, but we do have one. So it wasn't up to our normal standard. Also, we hadn't done the proper timing of it. We hadn't sent it to people ahead of time and explained what it was and all of those things that you should do, because it had got a bit like it's 10 o'clock the night before the pilot. We've just finished it, that kind of thing. So we hardly had any positive comments about the handbook. People were just like, I didn't know where it was. The design wasn't very good. I couldn't make notes on it that I wanted to. I didn't know which part of it related to what part of the session. I think one of the best comments about it was I didn't have time to write any notes in it because I was so involved in the sessions. Like, yeah, I like that. And none of that surprised us at all. We kind of knew going in, it's like, we know we haven't done our best work on this. We don't think it's going to work, and we were right. So it's one of those, like, we've parked that. We'll come back to it at some point if people start saying we want some kind of workbook, but we've got all of the resources detailed on the forum. So we're kind of going, we think that's where people are going to go for it. So that's a really good example of something that we should have done, we did, could have done better, but at the same time kind of knew all the way along. But the research told us people wanted it, so we tried it.
That's a really good, you did the research, you found out people might want this, you did a prototype that wasn't like you put all of your effort, and then the feedback, it doesn't sound like the design's not very good, but it wasn't, it was more based on the idea. It was more feedback on the idea of I should be taking notes in this specific way during this session that's really immersive and it takes me out. And was it something for them to physically print and do?
I think we did a couple of options. They could definitely download it. I can't remember whether we did it as a Word document or a PDF for people to download, or both, or it could have been printed. But we definitely didn't give people enough time when we piloted it to make that choice. And that was a big point for us. It's like when we do stuff, we've got to give people a week's notice or 2 weeks notice to think about those things, to download them, to print them, whatever it might be. So even though you could deem it technically it's a failure, it was a great learning point and just reminded us the importance of teaming things up and explaining things and all of those things.
Okay. So is there anything else you learned? You have to give a lot of notice, because that sounded like it came from experience.
Yeah. We had another issue with people logging into the very first session. And it was a really challenging one. So one of the things with being a members only thing where people are paying a reasonable amount of money for something is you need it to be locked down, because otherwise anybody can come along, anybody can share the link. And we had a lot of discussions about how we were going to do this, right through to we're going to have unique usernames. Everybody's going to log in and Jane's going to be Jane001 and all of this stuff. And it got to literally the day before the pilot where I listened to my gut instinct and went, I don't want any of that. I just want people to log in and be Jane Davids, and we know it's Jane, and that's fantastic. And we feel like if we get technical problems later, if we get people taking advantage of it, we'll revisit. But we've got to trust people in the first instance. But one of the things we do have is everybody's got we use Adobe Connect as our main platform. Everybody's got a login on our Adobe Connect license. And that caused a lot of issues because whilst we'd set everybody up, we'd emailed everybody, the Adobe platform emails them, they logged in, they changed their password, with the exception of one person, which I think might actually be Jane, who is here today. That was completely our fault that Jane couldn't log in because we'd made an oversight. And it was sad face. That was completely our fault for not doing a technical thing behind the scenes because we hadn't realised. But apart from that, all of the other problems came from communication. So it was a case of people hadn't quite realised they'd got a new password. They didn't realise they had to log in with that password. They didn't realise which link. And it just became really obvious to us that whilst technically we had done the right things and we had informed them, we needed to be a lot clearer about absolutely everything. So Michael recorded a video and said, this is how to change your password. This is all the emails you're going to get. We've made all the links clearer. We've done different emails running up to it. And we haven't had the same problem since. And it's really easy to kind of go, yeah, everyone knows that, Joe. You've got to make it simple. And we thought we had, but we hadn't done it enough. And that's really interesting to go from, we've done it to this level. Oh, we need to do it to this level. And it's just one of those things that you learn from experience, unfortunately.
That's been, so my first e-learning, online learning job was running a virtual certification prep course. And I did it for about 2 years, and it was a 10-week course. So I got a lot of iterations in. And there's a big divide I found in the attitude of people who set up courses like this. And there are people who say, we need to make things really easy because, you know, people are busy and they're not going to read absolutely everything you send out. And then there are people who say, no, I put that in an email. Like, why? I'm not going to tell them again. And it's, I have a lot of feelings on that. But one of the things that reminded me of was the passwords. We had everything was in Moodle. So you had your Moodle login and password, but then the Vimeo videos were locked down. But you can't do individual passwords on that. It was one password. So that password was in the email. It was, by the end, it was in a post on the thing, like a reminder. Password for Vimeo is this. Then it was eventually in bold under the link to the video. And I still got at least one email every session. And that was like, you can't make it foolproof. And, you know, if you do, what's Michael going to do all day?
Exactly. But it's really hard in the moment when things are happening and you're reacting very negatively, not to be like, oh my God, people, rah, rah, and have all these negative reactions. But in absolutely the other scenario, the other way around, I'll get an email and I'll be like, where's the link? Where's the link? Why isn't it jumping out to me? I don't want to read all this stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, what's good on one hand has to be good on the other hand. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's not just that you are the only busy professional. You can't read this, but
I thought it was. Apparently it's not all about me.
But that is such a big thing in virtual classrooms, is just having empathy for the fact that this was your entire week setting this up. This is not their entire week. They're carving out 90 minutes for you. And that is a gift. And you should make that gift as easy as possible for them to give to you.
Absolutely. And make it as interesting and fascinating and worthwhile as possible, so they take it away. So it's a highlight of their day, if you can be. And I think you say that so well, that just because it's all in my head and it's all I've been working on, for them it's just a little thing that they're going and doing extra to their job on top of everything else. So we have to be really respectful of that.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing is, what have you changed from your pilot to the session you're going to lead this month? What have been the biggest changes you've made?
So some of those changes, some of them are nuance, things like getting to the content really quickly as we possibly can. Some of it is reflecting back on what we've done before, so that learning and repetition, and including things like in the community this month, this is what happened, and giving links to people, again promoting that. I think one of the other things is how we were going to do the interactivity. It's interesting that Michael and I quite often have slightly different opinions on things and have to come together. And I had anticipated it would be Bob putting in a community, I've got this activity, I want to practice it. Can you give me 5 minutes? Yeah, cool. And I would still do that. If Bob writes in the community, that's what he wants to do, we'll give him that time. But actually what we've changed is much more into, I'm creating the activity for somebody to go and deliver. And after last time, April session, it was just not clear enough what people were going to do and how it was going to work. And that's basically, that's my fault. That's something I've got to fix, is the design of my activity and how I deliver that and get people going on that. To the point actually that in our debrief video, Michael had said, yeah, nobody was volunteering. And I was really hoping Joe wouldn't ask me, because I wasn't sure what the activity was either. And he's, we clear everything with each other. So that was a big lesson for me, that I needed to be clearer on that. And I think that's a really important lesson across all of this. I've been doing this for 5 years, but then I'm still getting to points of going, oh my God, that activity did not happen as I wanted it to. And that we've got to not be complacent about that. And there are always things we can always improve.
Awesome. Well, that's perfect. That was good timing. You ended on the theme. Beautiful. So you had posted all of the links. Can you
yeah, I can do some of those again.
Yeah, talk about how we can join. When's the May session?
It is May 23rd, I think it is. It's either the day or before or after Michael's birthday. I can't remember exactly. End of May is the next one. You can go and find the information on the website. If you want to sign up, this wasn't about that kind of thing, but if you want to drop me an email, I'll find some special super discount deal for TLDC people. Thank you, Jane. 23rd of May. I knew it was either the day before or the day after Mike's birthday. So it's the day after. Yeah, go and find out more. But also, if this isn't your thing and you don't want to go and pay for your CPD series with me, I will not be offended. It's no problem. And I do have a free community that you can go join to.
Great. Yeah, I'm really excited about both the free one and the monthly one. I want to find my form, my survey that I had originally shared when I was thinking about starting this series of webinars. I just have a really quick form. If you are ever interested in joining me on this, and this goes for you again, Joe, but also people listening. If you're ever interested in joining me on this and want to share a project that you've worked on, as you can see, I'm very nice. I won't interrogate you that much.
And actually, it's been a really nice reflection for me as well, because we don't always in our projects stop and think about it too much. And then somebody else's questions, like Kirsten's questions today, and questions from you guys in the chat window, has made me think about things in a different way. So I say thank you very much, and can heartily recommend this to other people too.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, that's the goal. Is my company, we try really hard to do that kind of after action review for everything, but it really it helps to be critical, and I really appreciate you willing to face that criticality in front of other people.
Pleasure. If we're not open and honest, like Jane said, then we can't learn from each other. So yeah.
Yes. Well, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And
thank you, everybody.
Have a wonderful bank holiday. I want to see pictures of your garden.
I will do so.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.